Digital downloads. They've become such a big part of how we get games. They're distributed in a totally different way nowadays, but physical copies still exist. And you might notice one very large similarity between a digital and a physical copy: the price. But why the price? How can a game publisher justify the idea that you should be charged the same amount to download a game as to go to the store and buy it? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx we ask the question, why did digital games cost the same as retail copies? So in the land of the physical product, there is something we deal with called scarcity. In order to create a physical product, resources have to be pooled, refined, developed, and then manufactured in order to put a product to market. There is a definite cost for the physical product. However, in 2017, that cost is very, very low. It could probably cost about $5 total in order to make a disc, and the packaging that contains it. But the bandwidth that it takes to download a couple of gigabytes most likely costs a minuscule fraction of $5. At this point, bandwidth costs so little it's not even a factor in a lot of equations, particularly in the distribution of content. Internet connections are very fast, and speaking relatively to the cost that an internet connection used to be, they're pretty cheap now too. A T1 line back in the day, let's not even talk about the cost of, and the average internet connection now is faster than that by a lot. And regardless of how the game is distributed, it still costs money to make and market. That labor went into the product one way or the other. Still, the digital copy, which costs virtually nothing to manufacture and distribute, doesn't have to be shipped anywhere. No employees have to be paid in order to take care of it, make sure nobody steals it, etc. So let's talk about their justifications and try to figure out exactly what the deal is. Now bear in mind, any estimates I use on prices are going to be conservative and, well, I'm not going to make it unfair for companies. And I say that because any opinions I express, I don't want to be construed as unfair. So as I said, the cost for a physical release is pretty low, and the cost for a digital release is minuscule. And either way you release a game, there are costs that are automatically inherent. Again, the labor to create the game and marketing costs. But if those were the only factors, the margin would be exactly the same on a game priced both ways, and most likely it isn't. The digital download most likely has a larger margin, making the assumption that at the end of the day, the margin is specifically just $5 more. Why not just sell the download at a few dollars less? Compensate for the fact that you don't have to manufacture it. Well, for one, the maximum profit possible is the point of a company. You might say, but the point of the company is to make video games. Well, individuals can do that. Collectives can do that. People can band together and make whatever game they want to make. The more people that are willing to volunteer their time or just enter into a partnership and split profits, the closer to a AAA game any group of people could get. Now, the point of making it as a company is because it's big business, and big business is concerned with profit. This is something we absolutely have to acknowledge if we want to understand fully exactly what's going on with the pricing of any product, not just video games. Here's the thing. Before Steam, before the PlayStation Store, before the Xbox Live Store, there was only physical stores. And those stores employ people who depend on those stores staying open in order to make money. Now, believe me, those stores wouldn't care about those people if they could operate without those people, because those stores' motive is also the highest profit possible. But at the moment, they do require those people to be there, at least if they're not run by Amazon, who has a store that apparently no people need to be in. But that's besides the point. The point is, if Sony or Microsoft one day decided that they wanted to undercut those stores and sell digital downloads at a lower price, those stores would automatically have a very large problem. It's not valuable to stock these games. And if you don't stock these games, less people will come in. Because let's just be completely honest here, the only time I've been into a Best Buy in the last few years is to get a video game or an accessory for a video game, and then picked up a video game in the process. Controllers, portable transport bags, dance mats. That stuff is there, but if there was no reason to stock the games themselves, most likely those things would not be there. But what's stopping Microsoft and Sony from saying, you know what? Actually, we don't need those guys. Digital downloads are the future, let's just do that. Your instinct might be because some people like to have physical copies of the games, and that's not wrong because there are a lot of people that are like that. But in reality, I think if digital downloads were 1/3 the price, physical copies would probably, well, die out except for collector's editions. Can you imagine what would happen if there were no such thing as a big console release? If there weren't pictures of people in lines, gradually grew into a cheering crowd ready to get their hands on a console first? Do you think that would kind of negatively impact the amount of hype that could be generated for a console? I personally do. Even though they may not be necessary, it's pretty easy to order a console off of Amazon at this point. Big releases have a tangible effect that make you feel like, hey, there's people excited for this. They're willing to go stand out in the cold in a line. You know, that kind of makes me excited for it too. If that didn't happen, if, say, Microsoft started selling all digital downloads at $30 and brick and mortar retailers got all pissed off and said, you know what, we're not carrying video game stuff anymore. Do you think it might be a little bit harder to sell a console? I do. In fact, I definitely do. I think that it's almost an obvious thing to say at this point. Hype is a big factor in selling almost anything nowadays. And although a lot of the time it ends up disappointing people over specific games, oftentimes the hype for a console actually makes sense. And having wide distribution of a console is obviously beneficial because having the platform installed in more places means more people will want to develop for it. If a game costs $34 online, that would pretty much completely de-incentivize the carrying of video games in a brick and mortar store. So thinking about that, the main reason digital games cost the same as retail copies is because brick and mortar stores are still viewed as important by video game makers. Hype is still viewed as important. Having a centralized place where you can see other people also excited to get a game, console, or game, or accessory is still important. Even though it's oriented around consumption, it does provide some sense of community that you probably wouldn't get if everything was just specifically a digital download. In fact, a lot of detractors from the idea of buying a game as a digital download often cite this. You'll see people asking why you wouldn't want to leave your house to buy a game. As somebody who buys games both ways, I like to get games as a digital download, but sometimes I do like to go to the store. I like to see how many copies there are on the shelf. I like to know if other people are interested in it in a tangible, local way. But I don't know that I like it enough for it to cost that much more. Knowing that the platform holder and the publisher would still get the same amount of money if a game cost $34 kinda taints the physical copy a bit for me, because I know that it's keeping the price of the game higher, specifically so platform holders can maintain relationships with brick and mortar retailers. I think if we weren't living in a country where money was that big of a deal that you needed to save it in order to have anything, not just video games, I mean like food, in a country where income inequality is kind of an actual big deal, then I would probably favor the more community-oriented elements of actually physically going to the store. But that being said, most people are worried about money on some level, and I think that digital downloads definitely cater to those people, or at least should. And also keep in mind, I'm looking at it entirely from a what is justifying the costs perspective, not from a, well, we know we can charge full price for a digital download perspective. I mean, knowing there's an extra $26 in the margin for you if somebody purchases it over the internet, I mean, there's as much incentive there as there is to have that community hype train. That's a lot of money. That's almost doubling the intake of money that a publisher gets. So, short answer, it's about greed. Long answer, it's about maintaining a distribution environment that works on multiple levels and maintains the relationships between large companies that could easily compete with each other, but instead prefer to have a more mutual relationship that benefits them both. And we could debate on whether that's good or bad all day long. In fact, I think it'd be a good idea to head down to the comments and tell me what you think about that. If you enjoyed this video, found it informative, please click the like button. And if you're not subscribed, now would be a very good time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and we thank you very much for watching this specific video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.